I mean, I got 9 kids, 9 dogs, 3 grandkids, 1 in the oven, 3 parrots.
For 9 years, they felt like a family. America watched them grow up, fall in love, and survive every hardship the frontier could throw at them. But the cameras only showed one side. Behind the warm farmhouse and the gentle music, something much darker was unfolding. One star was drinking herself toward collapse. Another was hiding abuse no child should ever carry, and the man everyone called a father figure. Some of his castmates remember him very differently. Music. What really happened to this beloved cast is nothing like the show you grew up loving, and the truth is finally coming out. Michael Landon, born Eugene Morris Owowitz on October 31, 1936, Music, in Forest Hills, Queens. Michael Landon came to Little House after already becoming one of television's biggest music faces. 4 years, audiences knew him as Little Joe Cartwright on Bonanza, where he starred from 1959 to 1973. That long run mattered. By the time Little House on the Prairie began, Landon was already a major star. Then the show gave him something even bigger. It gave him real creative power. His background helps explain why that mattered, music, so much to him. Accounts of his life describe a painful childhood shaped by a troubled home, a mother who struggled deeply, and the feeling of being an outsider while growing up in New Jersey. For a time, sports seemed to offer him a way forward. His skill in javelin took him briefly to USC, but an injury ended that path early. From there, acting became the road that music stayed open, and he ran with it. The scale of his success before Little House was huge. Bonanza ranked as the #1 show from 1964 to 1967. And at one point, it was being watched in 87 countries by an estimated 400 million viewers. So when Landon arrived at Little House, he was already famous. Even so, this next chapter changed his place in television. The series made him far more than a performer. It made him a star producer with something close to authorship over a hit network drama. His career afterward followed a clear path. Music. He moved from I Was a Teenage Werewolf in 1957 to Bonanza in 1959, then to Little House on the Prairie in 1974 Music, and later to Highway to Heaven in 1984. Even near the end of his life, he was still working. He had a new pilot called Us in development when illness cut that final chapter short in 1991. His personal life unfolded with much more complexity. Over the years, Landon married 3 times. He was married to Dodie Levy Fraser from 1956 to 1962. Then he married Lynn Noy in 1963, and that marriage lasted until 1982. After that, he married Cindy Clerico in 1983, and they remained together until his death. Across those marriages, he fathered or adopted 9 children. With Levy Fraser, he had Mark and Josh. Music. With Noir, he had Cheryl, Leslie, Michael Jr., Shauna, and Christopher. With Clerico, he had Jennifer and Sean. That part of his life also brought the biggest public controversy of his career. The issue was not criminal, yet it deeply affected how people saw him. His affair with Cindy Clerico, who was then a makeup artist on Little House, ended his second marriage and changed the way some coworkers and fans viewed him. That shift stayed attached to his image for years. Then came the final stretch of his life, and it sealed his legend in a different way. On April 5, 1991, Landon learned that he had inoperable cancer of the liver and pancreas. Just days later, during an April 8 press conference, he spoke publicly about it and said, "Music. I am going to fight it and live every moment, guys." Those words carried weight because so many people had known him through roles built on strength, calm, and fatherly certainty. Seeing him face death in public gave his story an added emotional force. Music. That same emotional force shaped how people remembered him after he was gone. Later cast recollections often split in striking ways. Music. Melissa Gilbert remembered him as a father figure. Karen Grassle remembered something much harder. She described him as cold after a music dispute over a raise. And she also recalled vulgar sexual jokes that she felt unable to challenge in the workplace culture of the 1970s. Both memories have been documented, and
Melissa
together they
Gilbert,
show how
born on May
complicated
8,
Landon could be in
1964
real
in
life.
Los Angeles, and adopted as an infant, Melissa Gilbert became Laura Ingalls Wilder when she was only 9 years old. That role shaped the rest of her life in ways that never fully let go. She stayed active on television as an adult, later served as president of the Screen Actors Guild from 2001 to 2005, and eventually built a public life as a memoirist and lifestyle entrepreneur. Even so, her story after Little House feels deeply personal at every turn. Again and again, she returned to the same core questions about identity, pain, secrecy, and the challenge of understanding her own life. Those themes appeared clearly in her later interviews and writing. She spoke about being adopted and about the silence that often surrounds family truths. She also discussed misophonia and said the condition made her feel afraid and isolated. Another painful revelation came when she learned that the father who raised her had died by suicide, even though she had been told when she was 11 that he had died from a stroke. That discovery, music, gave her past a different shape, and it added another layer to the story she had already been music, trying to piece together for years. Her marriages and children are well documented, and they form an important part of that ongoing self-explanation. Gilbert married Bo Brinkman in 1988, and their son Dakota was born in May 1989. Later, she married Bruce Boxleitner on January 1, 1995, and their son Michael was born in October 1995. He was named after Michael Landon, which shows how lasting that bond remained in her life. Then, on April 24, 2013, she married Timothy Busfield. These family connections matter because Gilbert did something very few former child stars manage with such persistence. She kept returning to her own life as material, and she tried to make sense of it in public. Her memoir Prairie Tale came out in 2009, and Back to the Prairie followed in 2022. Along the way, she stayed closely linked to the legacy of Little House. Music, she appeared at reunions, joined podcasts, took part in documentaries, and kept engaging with new conversations about what the show meant. The most clearly documented public problems in her adult life involved money and health. In 2015, the IRS filed a lien saying she owed more than $360,000 in federal income taxes. Around the same time, reports also pointed to a California tax debt of about $112,000. Gilbert said she had arranged a payment plan and explained the debt by pointing to recession pressures, divorce, and a stalled acting career. Then her physical condition added even more strain. In 2016, she withdrew from her run for Congress in Michigan, saying that head and neck injuries from 2 accidents in 2012 had grown worse. Reports also noted that she had already gone through multiple spinal surgeries, music, including surgery, after breaking her back in 2010. So the years after Little House did not unfold quietly for her. They became a long public effort to keep moving forward while carrying the weight of old fame, old injuries, and the story other people still expected her to live inside. Melissa Music Sue Anderson. Melissa Sue Anderson's story moves in a quieter direction, music, though it is no less revealing. She was born on September 26, 1962 music, in Berkeley, California, and moved to Southern California as a child. Her career began in commercials, and from there she won the role of Mary Ingalls. During the run of Little House, she came to be seen as the music prestige actor among the children. That reputation reached a high point when she earned an Emmy nomination for I'll Be Waving As You Drive Away. Even so, the role gradually became harder for her to carry. In her own later account, Mary's blindness storylines had started to wear her down. In a revealing 2010 interview, Anderson said, "I used to say I was blind and boring. Either I was just there not doing much or going through some tragedy. I couldn't take it anymore. It became too soap opera-ish." That comment remains one of the clearest music first-hand statements from anyone connected to Little House. It shows a performer reaching a point where the role's emotional demands and artistic limits had become impossible to ignore. After the series ended, Anderson kept working. She appeared in television projects and horror films, including Happy Birthday to Me. Later, she also took roles in projects such as The Equalizer and the 2006 NBC miniseries 10.5 Apocalypse. Her personal life also settled into a clear shape. In 1990, she married television writer-producer Michael Sloan. Together, they had 2 children. In 2002, the family moved to Montreal, and in 2007, she became a naturalized Canadian on Canada Day. What stands out most in her post-Prairie image is restraint. While Melissa Gilbert and Alison Arngrim became known for highly confessional books, Anderson's 2010 memoir was widely described as much more reserved. That reserve then became part of how people understood her. She seemed less interested in reopening old wounds and more interested in letting certain distances remain where they were. That feeling came through strongly when she was asked about Gilbert's more dramatic account music of their relationship. Anderson answered with striking calm. She said, "I honestly do not have a lot of memories of the two of us. We were very, very different." Years later, in late 2025, Gilbert publicly announced that the two had reconciled. That later warmth adds an important note to the story. Yet, the long gap still says a great deal. What music existed between them was not one giant public blow-up. It was a distance that lasted music for decades because their lives, personalities, and emotional worlds simply did not meet in the same music place. Karen Grassle. If Landon's story was marked by an early death and Gilbert's by constant public exposure, Karen Grassle's story moved in a different direction. Hers was shaped by concealment. To the public, music became America's TV mom. Yet, in her 2021 interviews and memoir, she opened a very different window into her life and revealed music, how much pain she had been carrying during the years of the show. In a KLU interview, Grassle spoke with striking honesty about what she had lived through. She said, "My dad was alcoholic. He was a depressive. I inherited his alcoholism and his depression. I was beaten by that by the time I had been on the show for 2 or 3 years. My health was going down fast, and I had to do something." She also shared that her father died of alcoholism in Ventura and explained that she needed both professional help and personal support in order to stop drinking. Those statements stand out because they are among the clearest and most painful revelations made by any music principal cast member about what life was really like during the period when the show was being filmed. That private struggle was only one part of the story. Music Grassle's professional conflict with Michael Landon is also well documented, and it adds another layer to her experience. In a 2021 People interview connected to her memoir, she said she felt insulted music when a raise she requested was first denied during season 2. She also accused Landon of making crude jokes that made her want to disappear. Music later, on the officially licensed Little House site, she described the greatest challenge of the series in even broader terms. Landon Music was her acting partner, her director, and her producer at the same time, which meant the balance of power was never equal. Even so, her account does not stay locked in bitterness. She also said that they mended our fences before his death, and that detail matters because it gives the story more depth. Grassle was not presenting him as a simple villain. She was describing Music, a gifted and powerful man working inside a sexist television culture that placed enormous control in his hands. Her family life is harder to pin down with the same level of precision. Public summaries generally agree that she had 3 marriages and adopted children. The official site confirms at least one adopted son, Music Zach, who lives near her in the Bay Area, and People has summarized her as having adopted 2 children. Beyond that, the record becomes less secure. The strongest easily accessible sources do not clearly establish the names of every spouse, the names of every child, or the exact dates of each major family event with a level of certainty needed here. Because of that, Music, it is more accurate to acknowledge the gap than to fill it with details drawn from weak secondary claims. What does remain clear is the broad shape of her life and career. She built a foundation in theater before Little House. She rose to national fame through the series from 1974 to 1983. She began her sobriety in 1977. She continued working in television and film. Afterward, then much later, she returned to this chapter of her life with unusual candor in her 2021 memoir. Taken together, those facts reveal a woman whose public image looked warm, steady, music, and familiar, while her private reality was far more difficult and far more complex. Alison Arngrim. Alison Arngrim's journey from a child actress people love music to hate into a respected survivor and public voice is one of the most striking stories in the cast. Across interviews over the years, the heart of her story has remained the same. She revealed that she was sexually abused by a family member starting at age 6. And she later explained that playing Nellie Oleson gave her somewhere to pour all the anger she had been carrying. She said that living with abuse filled her with rage, and playing Nellie gave her a place to release it. That role gave her relief at a time when she badly needed it. Yet, it also brought a painful cost. Reports later explained that the abuse lasted for nearly 3 years. Once she became widely known as Nellie, people reacted to her as though she truly were the cruel girl from a screen. In public, music, she was insulted, spat on, hit with garbage, and even beaten. So while the character helped her survive a dark part of her life, it also locked her inside an image that followed her everywhere. As she grew older, Arngrim found ways to reshape that image and use it on her own terms. She published her 2010 memoir, Confessions of a Prairie, created a successful stage comedy persona built around Nellie, and devoted herself to advocacy work connected to AIDS awareness and child protection. After Steve Tracy, who played her Little House husband Pearl, died from complications related to HIV/AIDS in 1986, she deepened her work with AIDS Project Los Angeles. Over time, public feeling toward her changed as well. In later interviews, she made it clear that the fame which once felt heavy had become something useful in her life. What makes her story so compelling is the way she transformed a role that once boxed her into a path for humor, honesty, activism, and survival. The record of her private life is not as full as the public account of Melissa Gilbert. Yet, it is still more clearly documented than some others from the cast. Reports in 2025 stated that Arngrim had been married twice, and that her second marriage to Robert Schoonover began in 1993. Dean Butler Butler was born in 1956, and is widely reported as Canadian-born. He joined the series later, so he came in with a different point of view from the original child cast. His role as Almanzo Wilder tied him to what may be the show's most famous romance. Years later, in music retrospective interviews, he spoke very openly about the discomfort behind it. In 2024, he told people that if he could change one thing, music, he would want to be closer to Melissa Gilbert's age. When their characters shared their first kiss, music, he was 23 and she was 15. The scenes were not illegal and they were not hidden. What they show very clearly is the kind of setup the industry accepted at the time, even though both performers later looked back on it with discomfort. After Little House, Butler built a career that stayed steady and active. He appeared in Forever the New Gig and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. As time went on, he also moved behind the camera and worked in documentary, entertainment, and sports production, including work on Golf Channel's Ferdy. In 2001, he married actress Catherine Cannon and became stepfather to her son. Then in 2024, he published the memoir many fans had been waiting for over the years. What stands out most in the interviews around that release is the care with which he speaks about the past. He has been honest about the hard parts and said the book includes hurt feelings and disappointments. Even so, he still described Little House as the most significant thing in his life and called it a massive gift. That balance says a lot about how Butler sees his place in the show's history. He comes across as someone trying to hold affection and honesty together in the same story without turning the past into pure nostalgia and without tearing it down. Victor French. Victor French music brought a rough warmth to the show that felt completely lived in. Born in 1934, he had already built a long career as a Western actor and stuntman before joining Little House on the Prairie. He played Isaiah Edwards from 1974 to 1977, then returned from 1981 to 1984. Music, which gave the character an even deeper place in the story of the series. Along the way, he also directed many episodes, and later he teamed up again with Michael Landon on Highway to Heaven. His life off-screen was less fully documented than some of his castmates, at least in the strongest public sources reviewed here. Those sources confirm that he had 3 children and that he was married to Judith Shun from 1959 to 1975. Still, they do not clearly confirm the children's names. In the same way, there does not seem to be a widely available direct interview quote from French that matches the richer public record left behind by figures like Landon, Melissa Gilbert, or Karen Grassle. French died of lung cancer on June 15, 1989, at the age of 54. His diagnosis had come only a few months earlier, which made the loss feel sudden and especially cruel. Catherine McGregor. Catherine McGregor had one of the most unexpected stories behind the scenes. She was born Dory Dean McGregor in 1925, and on Little House, she became Harriet Music Olson, one of television's most unforgettable gossip. Harriet could be sharp, overbearing, and often ridiculous. Yet McGregor gave her such force and presence that the character stayed memorable far beyond the show itself. Away from the camera, her music, life moved through much harder and more personal struggles. She dealt with alcoholism, and in time she found recovery through Alcoholics Anonymous and her Hindu faith. That journey changed the direction of her later years. After the series ended, she gave far more of herself to children's theater and spiritual life than to television. Later material connected to the franchise describes how warmly she spoke about writing, directing, and designing plays for children, which shows how much creative energy she poured into that work. Her personal life also carried its own changes. She was married music first to Burt Remsen and later to Edward G.K. Martin, and both marriages ended in divorce. She died on November 13, 2018 at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills. In the strongest mainstream sources reviewed here, her cause of death was not publicly disclosed. One detail about her later years has followed her story for a long time. The widely repeated account says that she missed the last farewell because she was in India on pilgrimage. That version appears consistently in later biographies and on the official franchise site, so it stands as a well-supported part of her story, even if the most direct contemporaneous production record was not located here. Richard Bull. Richard Bull gave the series a steadiness that mattered more with every episode. Born in Zion, Illinois in 1924, he worked for decades in stage, film, and television before Little House, and continued acting long after it. That long experience gave him a calm screen presence, and it served the show beautifully. As Nels Olson, Bull became the quiet balance inside one of the series' most entertaining family dynamics. Harriet and Nellie could go very big, very fast, and Nels worked because he seemed to understand exactly how absurd things had become. That sense of restraint made the whole household more believable, and it gave the comedy room to breathe without losing its human side. Music. His life off-screen appears notably stable, especially when placed beside the turbulence that marked some other Hollywood careers. He later reunited with Michael Landon on Highway to Heaven and kept acting music well into old age. Bull died on February 3, 2014, at the age of 89 after being hospitalized with pneumonia. Some reports describe the cause as complications from pneumonia, while others referred to natural causes following that hospitalization. Taken together, those accounts point to the same final chapter and reflect a life that in public record remained largely defined by professional consistency rather than scandal.